Hello, friends and family. Good to see you. Get the angle right there. All right. Kind of want... That should be all right. Okay. Hello. Thank you for being here. The title of this video is Waking Up Out of the Hypnosis of the Self. So I don't usually mention this because I'm not really aligned with this type of activity anymore, but I spent some time learning about hypnosis, and I went and I got a certification in it, and I got into it because I just thought it was the most fascinating, most incredible art. And I remember seeing it for the first time. A guy named Mike Mandel, perhaps one of the greatest living hypnotists that there are now. He came to my university and he did the show, and up until then I was like you, where I was like I don't know what it is, I don't really believe in it, based on everything that I understand about it, I think it's bullshit. And then he invited all these people on stage, and he went through like some sort of ritual that I did not understand, and everybody just kind of went, everybody was under his thumb for the whole show, and he had them doing increasingly ridiculous things. And it was the funniest and most interesting thing I've ever seen. I was just blown away. I was just changed. And so then, I later found his email. I think he posted it somewhere, and I sent him an email being like, hey, are you looking for an apprentice or something like that? And he said, no, but you should just consider taking my course. And the course was, I looked into it, I went on the website, and it was $1,600 for 2 weekends for a crash course. So like Saturday and Sunday for one weekend, and Friday, Saturday, and Sunday for another weekend. And I was like, damn, because I was 22 and I was in school, and I was like, man, I don't know if I can swing that. And but sure enough, I took on a landscaping job, and I worked, and I saved, and it was basically everything I had, and eventually I got into this course, and so I went into it, and the whole course was mind-blowing, and he taught us on all these different levels. Like he would teach us how to hypnotize people, and then he would hypnotize us in turn, and he would offer us metaphors and stories that were kind of designed to kind of move into the unconscious and kind of create the changes. And we learned about the unconscious mind, and it was fascinating. And since then I used it kind of as a party trick with some friends. And then I kind of relaxed it a little bit later when I started getting into spirituality, which it seemed to be a different type of movement. It was more movement into de-hypnosis, in the sense that, when you'd read a spiritual text that was pointing towards awakening or pointing towards enlightenment, the message that you'd get continuously is that you are asleep and you need to wake up. And how do you wake up? And it's not always clear about how you wake up, because the you who is attempting to wake up is actually a dream character that does not exist. And so the best you can do is make space for that which you are underneath this dream character to emerge. And so that's done by meditating, that's done by relaxing and kind of being less grippy, less, searching less, and above all, being really present, being really, really present with your experience right now, whatever it is, without trying to get into the future or without trying to get into the past, both of which are impossible, because both of which have no reality, because only now is real. So hypnosis still has its use, because as I mentioned in the previous video when I was talking about the coming into the ground of consciousness, to just awaken is good and useful. To just become enlightened, for example, is great. But after becoming enlightened, you still are a human being, and you still are here to function in your life, and you're here to serve and help and enjoy and interact and integrate that which you are and that which you've become into human society, into, say, politics and relationships and family and society and economy and all these things to pour yourself back in Adyashanti's words. And so therefore, you know, hypnosis is most useful when you are purposeful about it, so that you choose what type of trance you want to enter, and then you enter into it deliberately. Because whatever trance you are in, that becomes primarily, or rather, first of all, it becomes your inner experience, and then it becomes your lived experience. A different way of referencing this, or a different way of talking about this, is saying, whatever point of view you have, whatever frame you have, whatever beliefs you have about reality, that will manifest itself as your personal reality. So it's good to, one, wake up to this fact. That's the awakening part. And then two, after awakening, choose what kind of frame, what kind of point of view, what kind of hypnosis you want to be into. It's like I think the problem with hypnosis when we talk about it is that it has sort of a negative connotation, as if you are asleep. And in some sense it is perhaps accurate, but it's not so much that you're asleep. It's just like if you're looking, it's like this. Okay, so you know, you're on Netflix or a lately Crave TV for myself. You're on one of these video watching platforms. And imagine, you know, just you, in this strange example, you grew up watching one show and it's always been this one show. And somebody comes over and they're like, hey, there are other shows. And you're like, what are you talking about? Of course there are not. There's only this show. And so awakening in this analogy is you realizing that this show is only one of many shows, and that it's an option to choose what you're watching. And then you pause and hit the back, you know, on the upper left-hand arrow that makes it minimize, and then like this frame goes into like a section, into a selection of all of these videos that you can choose from. And it's like, okay, wow, I can choose my experience right now. I can choose exactly what I like. And then so that's the awakening. And then the second part is, what video do I want to watch now? Because it's not useful to stay outside of the matrix looking at the selection of videos. Still, what's ideal is to choose something and get into it. And then the analogy starts to fall apart, because you will not merely be watching it, but participating in it, and participating in other people's experience as well. The study and the application of hypnosis becomes more powerful to the extent that you realize that you live in a hypnosis. Because if you are convinced that you are awake and you're not, then you're limited. And then the question is, well, how do I know if I'm awake or if I'm asleep? And you can tell by the extent to which you feel like your reality is determined for you, the extent to which you feel powerless over some aspect of your reality, to the extent to which you feel like other people or other circumstances, or even other aspects of yourself or of your psychology, are controlling your experience for you, and it's by their grace and their will and their decision that you may experience this or that or whatever. That type of belief indicates that you reside in a hypnosis and you operate through a hypnosis. And so then that would indicate that it is time to wake up. So what made me want to talk about this today is that hypnosis is layered, and there are multiple facets to it. And just waking up out of hypnosis in one particular way doesn't mean that you are all the way awake. It just means you are awake from this one particular lie, or this one particular frame of reference that you once thought was permanent, and it turns out it's just a frame. One of the major hypnoses, perhaps that's the plural way to say it, is the hypnosis of the self. It is the belief in your selfhood. And so depending on how familiar you are with spiritual texts and the spiritual search and, like this kind of, area of research and of study, this may or may not sound familiar to you. If it does not sound familiar to you, it basically goes as this. You are not the self. There really is no such thing as a self. A self is a form of hypnosis. When I refer to this self, what I'm talking about is all the data about you. Everything you garb yourself with. All the details and information about you that you believe is what you are, instead of what it actually is, which is just information, just details, just objects, be they physical, mental, emotional, or whatever else. The one analogy is the self is the puppet and you are the hand. And the puppet is just something your hand wears in order to interact with the goings-on around you. As you become more and more deeply acquainted with your consciousness, and as you continue to disentangle yourself from everything that you think you are, you necessarily, inevitably become lighter, I find. Because if you think that you're this or that, like for example, if you think, suppose, I'm watching a lot of Game of Thrones lately, and there's a lot of family identification. It's like, you're a Lannister, Tywin, right? Or you're an Ironborn, or you're this or that. And somebody says, you are this family name. And it's like, well, now if the family name is under attack, if the family sigil is being desecrated perhaps, or if somebody speaks ill about your family name, it's like the idea of your family is being attacked, which if you think that's what you are, you will think you're being attacked. And then it's like, well, I can't just let this person insult me. I have to fight you now. So I don't think that's where you are, if you're a person watching a video such as this. I don't think, but it keeps going. There are many, many, many ideas and many, many different things that you can mistake for yourself. I think one main thing for a lot of us now is just, if you ask this question like, okay, what am I? And it's like, there's sort of like a feeling sense that arises. It's like, I'm this. This is what I am. Well, that is still an object. This is an important point because the trick to coming out of hypnosis and the trick to waking up is that there's nothing that can be done about it, because any action that you take, be it sort of physical or sort of like an internal, maybe perhaps, meditative kind of action towards awakening, all that would do is serve to increase the hypnosis. It would drive you further in. It's like this concept of the this Chinese handcuffs, where like they capture your fingers, and the more you struggle, the tighter it gets, kind of thing. In general, if you are fighting against something, if you're struggling against something, that will only take you deeper into the dream, not out of it. The way out of the dream is simply to realize that the dream is just a dream and that you exist outside of it. You are larger than it. After all, it is your creation. And not even something that you created a long time ago, but something that you continuously create, even now, on a breath-by-breath basis. All that's required is to recognize the hypnosis as hypnosis. So Eckhart Tolle has a term for when you're in a really heavy, painful type of hypnosis. He calls it the pain body. And he recommends that if you're raising a child, and if the child has a pain body attack, which is to, suddenly become really upset, really upset, tantrums and really unpleasant noises and all that, and he recommends in one of his books, he says to let it happen, contain it, but let it run its course. And then at the end, when everything's kind of settled and everything's okay again, be like, okay, so do you remember back then when you were in that? Like, what was that? What came over you? And then perhaps whatever that is, come up with a name for it, so that when it happens again, it'd be like, is this you, or is this pain body? Is this something else? And so in my relationship with my wife, for a long time, if either of us, felt like if we were really moody or really sullen, or, if we were angry or something, we'd ask, like, are you sane right now? So it's like, it's not a great question for just anybody. You need to ask a question, are you sane right now? You need to have a pre-made agreement that we know what we mean when we ask this kind of question. But assuming that's there, it's a very, very powerful question, because if I say, if I'm in a tantrum and you say, am I sane right now? And if I'm really like willing to like tell the truth and willing to look, and if there's still like a little piece of consciousness in me that is buried by the storm, the emotional hurricane that's my pain body, if I'm willing to go like, I'm not sane right now, my pain body is awake right now. It's not me that's doing this, it's my pain body. It's not a small thing. Like, there is vulnerability in there, and there's and to wake up out of a hypnosis that was causing damage and destruction and chaos all around you can be very embarrassing, and can bring a lot of shame, and that embarrassment and shame can be so strong that you would almost want to just get back into the pain body and keep fucking shit up, because you can't deal with it. But if you're willing to look, and if your commitment to truth is complete, in that truth is the highest priority, then you can tell the truth. You can say, I was asleep at the wheel. I was under hypnosis. I am in hypnosis right now. And it's the recognition of insanity that is sanity, the emergence of sanity. So I want to cap this off by saying there's an interesting moment that's available to all of us shortly in between waking up and getting out of bed. And I had a moment like this just this morning. That's why I wanted to make this video. It's really poignant, really beautiful, and it's really accessible. It's not far away. It's just something that if you just think like, okay, I'd like to try that, like that's enough, and you'll experience it tomorrow morning. So the thing is, right, is that like in our waking lives, as we go from morning to evening, as we go from one end to the other of a day, we carry a sense of self with us. And with that, we carry a sense of incompleteness, and a sense of needing to accomplish, and needing to get there, needing to get to the end, and a sense of urgency, and a sense of not enough, and it's almost like being dragged by your gut forward through, toward everything that you're doing. So we could roughly call this the campaign of me. The mission, the things that I'm trying to achieve, both on the short-term and long-term scale. It's storming right now. That's interesting. The campaign of me, the campaign of the self, the incomplete self that needs completion. All of that is a hypnosis. All of that is just a story. All of that is just what we tell ourselves. And upon waking, you can if you pay close attention, you can feel the campaign starting to boot back up, or to rest back on your head. It's like all the software, it's like comes up. It's like when you turn on your remember, do you guys remember the day when you had to turn on your computer, and you have to wait for the computer to turn on, or wait for the internet to connect, right? There's like this gestation period where everything kicks into gear. And if you watch, you can see everything that's false reasserting itself and usurping your conscious mind and putting you back in. And who knows, you could maybe have a really wonderful awakening experience with this, or maybe just a minor one. But every time you can distinguish between yourself and your story, that is the continuation of awakening. That is the deepening of awakening. That is the growth of consciousness. That is the reclamation of your creative energy from story and into you. The extent to which you can discern between you and the hypnosis that you're in is the extent to which you can free yourself of unnecessary suffering and struggle. What is there when the story dissolves? What is there behind and outside of the story? Is there anything beyond? That's all. Have a wonderful day.